Here comes Benny boy. Go on. Oh! G'day guys, this is my 2022 Husqvarna TE150i review. So basically I'm just over 160 centimetres coming off a Honda 150RB. So this bike's quite a big step up in terms of performance and to overall niceness. So the reason why I got this bike is basically I wanted to step up from obviously a smaller bike to a bigger bike, and I was in the market for something that was a bit lighter as I'm around the 45 kilogram mark. So this bike fitted my needs perfectly, being around 98 kilos dry. It was quite a light bike. Bloody hell. Almost. Originally I was looking at getting a second-hand KTM 150 EXC or a Husqvarna, whatever came up. So I was looking in that market, and lucky for me, we went into the dealership one day and I sat on this bike, and it's been a 2022 and I bought it 5 months ago. It was old stock, so lucky enough we picked this bike up for quite a cheap price, cheaper than any second-hand one we could find. So, perfect for me. Now, there's a couple of things that I was worried about before we bought this bike, and one of those things was the composite subframe. So basically, the KTMs run a different sort of subframe, and the Husqvarnas run composite. So that was one thing that was quite different, and I don't think it's a bad thing having the composite subframe on, but it does run up to about here. And if you've watched any of my other videos, I tend to loop out my bikes quite often. So I've had to get okay at using the rear brake on wheelies and stuff, so make sure that I don't loop it out. Another thing that I was quite worried about was being a little 150 small bore. I was worried about just power and torque overall, coming from a 4-stroke. Another thing would be the TPI system. This was quite big for me. Being a 2022, TPI system has been out for 5-ish years now, and so I was confident in it would be reliable, and I've seen a lot of things on the internet that they are reliable. However, there's quite a few things that I can't work on myself if something breaks, because everything's quite electrical. Like if you take this seat off, there's wires going everywhere and all electrical stuff. Another thing is these just down here, they have like an ECU cover sort of thing, and that stands right out. I'll show you soon, but it's asking for a rock or whatever to hit it. So there's a couple little things about the TPI system that I was quite worried about, but overall the TPI system's definitely outrun. Having the separate oil to the fuel, so you'd have to premix fuel, and also I go in between altitudes quite often, in between sort of 300 to 400 meters a week, different altitude, and so having the TPI is really good for that. Basically, suspension on this bike, obviously it's got the WP suspension front and rear. One of my front left shock things missing at the moment because I blew a fork seal at about 36 hours, so that's a bit disappointing. I was a bit surprised about that. That's why the front wheel's off there. But yeah, suspension, I've got this on the lightest setting, both front and rear, and it's super soft. It's softer than the suspension that comes on the Husqvarna FE250, same year. So basically it's awesome suspension. It absorbs anything I throw at it. It really doesn't want to buck you off no matter what. So suspension's really good on this bike. Let's now move on to the brakes and clutch of this bike. Obviously these bikes come with Brake Tech instead of Brembo for brakes and clutches, and I was a little bit worried about that. Obviously Brake Tech's not a bigger company and people say the Brembos are a lot better. I have to say I'm pretty impressed with the Brake Tech. The front brake's super linear and I can feather that when I'm going down a hill or whatever. Same with the rear brake, super good. Let's go to the Brake Tech clutch now. Brake Tech clutch now is definitely lighter than the Brembo clutch actually, surprisingly. Not much lighter, but I don't know how this works, but I get a lot less fatigue using the Brake Tech clutch over the Brembo clutch, so that's nice. Also, I should add, with the brakes, if you want to stop in time, the brakes are absolutely awesome on this. It will stop you in time. So yeah, let's move on to the dash now, because obviously this has a speedometer. So basically right here, you have your oil. So that's your TPI oil that goes here. And then here, all you do is press the button and you've got kilometers an hour. And then that's time, which isn't set, and then kilometers. If you press this button a couple times, you got hours, average speed, and all that sort of stuff. So that's that. Now let's move on to the whole front handlebars thing. Unfortunately, I have smashed the bottom of that, so I need to replace that. That's zip tied and taped together. Stock, these bikes come with these over here, at least mine did, where this map switch is, and personally I didn't like that one bit. I thought it was quite, because you need to get this bike a bit of rev when you start it. So I moved this start button closer to the throttle, and I moved this over here, so I can just one finger both of them. I don't ever use this really, because light beam and high beam, there's no real difference. So that's the front handlebars. Of course this bike comes with 2 maps. Opposed to the 4-strokes, they come with traction control too. This bike doesn't come with traction control. Has map 1 and 2. To be honest, I don't see any difference. They don't do really anything, so I don't know what maps what. I just keep mine in whatever. Move on to the ergonomics of this bike. So basically the ergonomics of this bike are very good. It makes you feel super confident on the trail or wherever you are, down a gully or riding fast. So basically the handlebars, I've got Pro Taper bars on this because I bent mine in the first couple of hours. They're basically the same as the stock ones, and the stock ones are a little bit thinner. I think they should widen them a little bit. But the whole front end of the bike feels super light. The foot pegs are at a great height. This is actually a motocross frame on this bike from I think the 125 instead of the enduro frame. But of course it's got enduro suspension, all that kind of stuff. So I think that's the ergonomics make you feel super confident on this bike. Let's move on to the motor and gearbox now. Gearbox can be a little bit clunky sometimes on this bike, which I was a little bit disappointed about. But with the motor, I think it's a pretty good match. The motor's a super torquey, light, little high revving engine that's great fun to ride on. If you're going up a hill climb or need to blip up something quickly, certainly got a power band, but it's quite linear going from down low power to up high. So motor on this bike's absolutely awesome. Alrighty, now it's time for the big log. I did one of both of them. Oh, that ain't good. Alright, now let's move on to upgrades and damage. Unfortunately, there is a fair few scratches and dents on this bike. One of the main parts would be the exhaust here, all the way up here. It's quite dented up and scratched. That's one thing I was quite worried about getting a 2-stroke, because the expansion chamber is quite big. I always drop my bikes a lot. I am quite mean to this bike, unfortunately. But my bark busters are both bent, super scratched up. That's a bit of damage. What else? My swing arms get super scratched up, so this is why I've got swing arm covers. I've also got a force rear disc guard. I've got my front one here, which is currently off. I haven't really ridden with this yet, but I'm looking forward to it. I've got, as I said earlier, the 30mm cruise lowering link, which is super good, easy to install, and a quarter of the weight from the stock one. I've got the Poly Sport pipe guard, which I don't recommend at all. It's basically useless. I don't see, doesn't do anything. Like, it's a pain to get off and on, and yeah, it doesn't really do anything. So yeah, that's my upgrades on this bike. I've bent up my radiator quite a lot. At this stage, I'm not gonna replace it because it's not leaking, and I also won't put a fan on this bike at this stage, as I haven't needed one yet. However, I am gonna try and save up to get some radiator guards / braces, because that's one thing that will happen lots than getting dented. Before I wrap up, I just want to talk about torque quickly in the motor. Basically, this bike's got plenty of torque for someone like me. Obviously, I will need to upgrade to a 250 sometime in the future, especially if I start racing. But so far, this bike's torque has been, actually, it surprised me quite a lot, especially how the TPI system linears the power delivery. I think it's awesome. Alright, let's wrap it up now. Overall, I think this bike's an absolutely awesome bike. I love it so much. Unfortunately, they are quite expensive, the Husqvarna and KTMs, but this bike, I'd say, is 100% worth it. The reliability, the sound, the engine, the suspension, the brakes, the ergonomics, everything that works together just absolutely works brilliantly. One thing I do want to add quickly, I've got a Cinco 505 cheater on the rear. It's worn quite quickly. I've got 5 hours on it, but I would suggest, as the shop person said, put a 110 size rear tyre on it, as this is only a 150. They come stock with a 140 80/18, but I think that's too wide for a smaller bike like this. So thanks guys for watching. Hopefully I'll be bringing some GoPro footage and more videos on this bike soon. Catch you on the next one. That's nice to run without here. That is so slippery. That's slick.